Good morning and welcome everyone to this webinar today about how to leverage Facebook resilience signals in a post-cookie world. So I'll be happy to give you a few words about who is with us today to present.
Hi.
So, I'm Sylvain Leborgne. I'm Head of Expertise and Innovation at 55. From the 55 team, I have with us today Marie, who is a media consultant, and Charles, who is working in the expertise and innovation team. We also have the opportunity and pleasure to have with us Julien from L'Occitane. Julien, if you can introduce yourself in a...
Thanks, Sylvain. I'm Julien Boucher. I'm the Global Digital Data and Traffic Manager at L'Occitane HQ. L'Occitane is a manufacturer and retailer of natural cosmetics and well-being products. We are managing 6 leading natural beauty brands, and we operate in 90 countries.
Great, thanks, Julien. And we also have the privilege to have Mike from Facebook.
Thanks, Sylvain. I'm Mike Béton. I'm marketing science partner for agency based in Paris, and I have worked with 55 on this paper and this webinar.
Thanks a lot, Mike. So what are we going to cover today? After a short introduction, I will give you a little more context about what's going on currently in our industry, but we will focus most of this webinar this morning around what are exactly resilient signals, and what does Facebook offer in that area? How does the Facebook conversion API work? And how did L'Occitane set it up to benefit from it? So what you will learn today, so 3 main things. First is how you can identify gaps in your digital marketing activities to see where your measurement should be improved and how you could work better on that. The second part is to understand what are resilient signals and how they can help overcome all of the limitations that the changes we are seeing in the industry are bringing. And finally, discover the technical solution offered by Facebook and the best practices to implement them. So it will not stop at the end of this webinar. You can always reach out to us. You will find available the session deck and the recording. You can also download the white paper we've been writing in collaboration with Facebook, and I'm sure you're gonna be able to find the link in the chat. You could also add to the 55 website and our Tea House articles. And finally, if all of this was not enough, you can always reach out to us through LinkedIn, for example. So for those who are meeting us for the first time, who is 55 exactly? So we are a data consulting company. We are more than 300 global experts spread in 8 offices across the world. We are working for more than 100 clients, 41 of them being in the Fortune 500 ranking. And basically what we do on a day-to-day basis, we deliver data-driven insights in a brand tech ecosystem. We are part of the core of the You and Mr. Jones group, where basically we focus on helping brands create value based on brand tech. So a few words around the context. So as you know, we've seen a lot of evolution recently in our data-driven universe. The first one, all of the consumers have grown in maturity. Now they need us to reinvent the exchange between having access to free services online with the data they're ready to share. So we need to be sure that we recreate a trade-off that they will understand, that they will find a better balance into it. And the second part is that the regulation have evolved very, very quickly. A few years back, we only had GDPR in Europe, but very, very quickly after that, the local bodies like the CNIL in France have started to put everything into motion, and it's been copied all across the world, for example, in California, but more recently in China, where you have to make sure that you collect the consent from your audiences before you decide how you'll be able to use the data you've collected. And the third main force is the big tech players that have decided to change and to update how we are managing currently data collection and to oversimplify, get rid of the cookie. But we've seen that we have to adapt very, very quickly on decisions taken by big software companies that decide to change how we were collecting data and leveraging in the future by focusing more on what could be resilient measurement methods. So now that we fully understand and fully see that the one-to-one marketing we thought we could build upon, based mostly on very granular data and cookie-based tracking and activation, is gone. We need to switch to a next generation measurement where we can treat differently the consumer based on the consent is ready to give us. So on one end, we will still have consented marketing with very, very valued and secure data, first-party data we can still collect, and we can work for that with all of the ecosystems on the market. And the second option will be to work based on cohort marketing, with an increased use of modelization to be able to get the best out of anonymized and aggregated data. So now I will hand over to Charles, who will tell you more about resilient signals.
Thanks, Sylvain. Before deep diving into Facebook resilient signals, we need to understand where the measurement gaps are in your marketing activities. So if we break down such activities in different moments of the journey, we first have on the awareness side, so it's meaning on the ad-centric side, less of a resilience issue, because here KPIs such as impressions or viewability are often not based on cookies. And if you are advertising on Facebook, since users are logged in, you can also get KPIs such as reach and social demo information, which are resilient. So it's interesting in our view to use even better those KPIs, but they are limited and you need to focus as well on other KPIs. So on the engagement and conversion part, here you need to be able to link an ad exposure and an action on a website or an application. And here it's mostly based on cookies, and it's where resilient signals will be most helpful. And finally, on the post-app or site and offline world, here it's not so much a question of resilience as well, but in our view, it's an opportunity to benefit from identifiers and people data that can be collected offline to reconcile them with the online and somewhat to compensate a less exhaustive online view with a more precise deep funnel view. So now that we understand where the measurement gaps need to be filled, let's see about the strategy. So you will find a lot of initiatives that promise you to maintain your data collection, but you need to be careful because many of them are rather workarounds or short-term solutions. On the other hand, we believe that marketers that will be able to focus on value generation will be those that find and analyze resilient signals. We define with Facebook a resilient signal as a signal that is resistant to technological unilateral decisions from large-sized tech players such as Apple, but are also fully respecting users' consent to any trackers and personal data use. So to get a bit more technical on how those resilient signals work, on the next slide, in our view, they are based on two principles, so server-side and people data. As regards server-side, in the current paradigm, all marketing data is sent directly from the user's browsers to the various partners, but this poses a lot of security issues and it's very easily blocked by players such as Apple with Safari. Instead, if you route your data from first to your own server before sending it to Facebook, for instance, you will have more control over the data and it will flow more exhaustively. So this is for the server-side part. And for people data, the idea here is that rather instead of using technical piece of information such as third-party cookies, since they are quickly becoming obsolete and blocked, if you get the right consent, and I insist on it, and if you provide the right experience so that users are willing to provide personal and people information, you will have access to a unique or almost unique identifier for each user, and you will be able to reconcile this personal information collected on your website or on your application with people data owned by Facebook. So below is an example of a journey. If I use the same personal information on Facebook when I see an ad, and for instance, on L'Occitane when I purchase a product, and if I transfer this information in a secure way with server-side, I can make sure that the reconciliation works properly and all my conversions are properly attributed. So now, how does this break down into Facebook solutions? So there are 4 solutions. The first and main solution in our view is Facebook Conversions API, or CAPI. Basically, it's just an API, so it can receive data from virtually any source, for instance, from a CRM. And if you want to send data from your website, it has to go first to a server. And this means that we are talking here about server-side tracking of websites. The second solution is advanced matching. So it's a pretty quick win solution. And basically, it consists in taking your existing pixel tracking, client-side tracking, and adding personal information when you have it in order to better reconcile conversions with Facebook campaigns. The third solution is offline conversion. Here, the principle is to onboard, for instance, client lists with people data, and again, to match them with a Facebook people graph, either to activate those audience or to measure on-to-off effects. So this solution is not new at all, but again, we believe that offline, since it can generate personal data, is more important now than ever. And the fourth and last solution is not completely a resilient signal, in the sense that it does not completely solve the problem. But as you know, iOS 14.5 has just been released, and when users do not consent to the Apple pop-in, it's key that you are able to maintain some measurements. And to do this, Apple lets you collect only aggregated campaign performance data. So you have to configure your Facebook Business Manager interface and your tracking to make sure that at least you save some data, some aggregated data. So you probably already have done this, so it's just a reminder. And also make sure that in your configurations, you have collected the most relevant KPIs and that you are conducting or about to conduct impact analysis. And so to summarize or let's say on what solutions are based. So what is interesting to note is that Conversion API can work with or without people data, but with people data, it will work better. And another important point is that the iOS 14 adaptations, they are not only concerning campaigns that redirect to applications, for instance, app install campaigns, but also campaigns that redirect to your website on mobiles. So make sure that both your apps and your websites have been configured properly for Facebook. So this is for the overview of technologies. And now we want to focus on Conversions API with Marie.
Thank you, Charles. So now we're going to focus on Facebook Conversions API, also known as CAPI, as Charles said earlier. But before we get into it, the real question is CAPI the solution you need? If you're aiming for upper and mid-funnel KPIs, such as qualified interactions or leads, for example, or if you're worried to bring qualified users, or if your goal is users' knowledge after they visit the website, then CAPI will definitely be of interest for you. Conversions API is a real opportunity for you to regain control over your data, especially in the case of sensitive industries such as banking. So Conversions API will help you work around data collection limitations in front from third-party keys due to solutions such as ad blockers and browsers limits that Sylvain talked about a bit earlier, in the case of on-site and in-app conversions with PII provided. But basically, how does CAPI work? CAPI can be divided into 4 main steps to understand how it works. First of all, a user will type in personal data, for instance, in a form that he will be offered to complete. Then the user is going to submit said form, and all customer data contained in the form, such as his name, his email address, his phone number, is hashed irreversibly on his browser. It is then sent along with the pixel event in a secure HTTPS connection, and eventually Facebook matches the information with its people data in order to attribute the conversion to a specific campaign. Once all of this is done, the data will be deleted shortly after, up to 48 hours at the latest. As it has been briefly explained earlier in the webinar by Charles, Conversions API offers three main benefits. First of all, it will help you have a more realistic number of conversions attributed to your ad by compensating all the losses that can be due to cookie loss thanks to people-based matching instead of cookie-based matching. Secondly, you will be able to optimize campaigns on a larger volume of conversions, since more conversions will have been attributed to your campaign, and even more if you combine Conversions API with advanced matching in order to improve your match rate. This will allow you to gain efficiency, as well as lower the average cost per conversions thanks to wider knowledge of people that are more likely to convert on your ad. And finally, from an audience point of view, your targeting will be more reliable thanks to additional clues that will help Facebook understand what audiences are more likely to convert. So all this makes Conversion API the most resilient solution in our eyes, as the solution is based on people data as well as server-side tracking. It is also the most full funnel because, as we will see just in a few seconds, you are able to track the user from its first interaction on Facebook up to offline conversions after the journey online is over. And finally, it is a very flexible solution since it offers native integrations as well as custom integrations with different tools. Now let's have a quick look at a concrete example in order to understand how resilient signals can enrich data collection and help overcome new limitations. So let's take a pretty common user journey. The user is exposed to an ad. He ends up on the website after having seen the ad. He then generates a lead on site and provides personal information. And finally, he is called back and the lead is qualified. As you know, using regular Facebook tracking, you will only be able to track the impression since it is in a Facebook logged-in environment. But as soon as we get out of this logged-in environment, you won't be able to track the user anymore since it relies on third-party tracking. Not talking about the callback, considered as an offline conversion, there's a very rarely reconciliated with the online path. With Conversions API, along with advanced matching, you will be able to match the on-site lead with Facebook users thanks to anonymized personal information. CAPI will also help you, thanks to server-to-server tracking, to reconciliate the offline conversions, in this case the callback, based on form identifier with the online exposure. In the end, when without Facebook resilient signals, you could only see the ad exposure. When you are using Facebook resilient signals, you will be able to see the ad exposure, the online lead, and the offline conversions. We prepared a quick demo of Conversions API setup in Google Tag Manager, so let's get to it.
Okay, so let's start. The first step is to have a GGM server-side container ready. I won't detail this step in this demo, but two things to keep in mind. Try to estimate the server cost beforehand, and also keep in mind to use a URL for this container that is first party compared to your website so that data will be more resilient. Second step, activate Conversion API in Facebook interface. To do so, go to your classic pixel tracking source in Event Manager. Go to Implementations, follow the step-by-step guide, get an API token here, also get ready with your pixel ID, and also get a test event code that will let you debug events during the implementation. So now let's start to add Facebook tags to GTM server side. To recap the architecture, we'll have on the client side, a GA4 tag sending data to GTM server side, and on the server side part, a GA4 client that will receive data, decompose it, hand it over to the Facebook copy tag, and this last tag will send it to Facebook Business Manager. So let's add the GA4 client and the Facebook tag. Okay, I'm in my empty GTM server side container. I will add the client now. So nothing special here, just selecting Google Analytics 4. No particular setup. Now let's add the Facebook Conversion API tag. New, right? I can select it from the gallery. I already have selected it, so it's here. I add my pixel ID and other information. Okay. Oop. And test event code. Okay. And as a trigger, I want this to be triggered when the GA4 client receives data. In case I have another client for this GTM server side, I only want this Facebook tag to listen to the GA4 client. So, okay, save. And I'm all set for the server side part. So now let's go to the client side part. On the client side here, I have some legacy Facebook pixel tracking for page views, and I also have some GA4 tracking. This GA4 tracking at the moment sends data directly to Google Analytics, but I wanted to send data to my GTM server side. So to do so, it's very easy. Go to the configuration tag for GA4 and add a parameter that is called transport URL. Up here, and I wanted to send data to my GTM server side URL, which is in this macro. Okay, so now it will be sending data correctly to GTM server side, but how do I make sure that the data is understood by Facebook? This is the beauty of the Facebook copy template. It can translate GA4 native parameters into Facebook parameters with the correct taxonomy. So here, the page location parameter for GA4 will be translated in the correct Facebook parameter. And it's the same, for instance, for event names. So here I have a page underscore view event name for Google Analytics 4. This tag is sending data to the GTM server side, and on GTM server side, Facebook copy tag will translate this event name so that it's understood by Facebook interface. So let's have a look at which events I'm sending at the moment. I will be sending a page view, a view item for e-commerce purpose, and at the moment there is this carousel click. So it's interesting for analytics, but for Facebook it's not quite interesting. So we'll just do one last thing in the GTM server side, which is to filter some events. Basically, I don't want this copy tag to be triggered for all events, but just the relevant ones, let's say. And what I will do is that I will say, okay, not only check that the client name is GA4 client, but also check the events. And for events, as I said, I want page view and I want view item. All right. Okay. So now I could already see data flowing properly, but there are three last things to have in mind. First, ensure event deduplication. Second, strengthen the resilience and the matching with Facebook. And lastly, check that consent is properly respected. Deduplication. Why deduplication? Because at the moment I have a pixel for page views and I also have a GA4 tag for page views. If I do nothing, it will create duplicates in Facebook reports. So for this, Facebook has a system that is based on an event ID that can be included in both tags, and when Facebook receives both informations, it will deduplicate it. So I have created a tag here and a macro that will generate a random ID, and I will use this random ID as a value for my event ID. So here I just have to add in parameter my event ID, event underscore ID, my macro, so it's something like constant random ID Facebook. I also add it to my pixel tag, and the code is the following one. Okay, I just put it here. Okay. Okay, so now I'm all set with deduplication. I need to make sure that all this setup is resistant to several cookie constraints, because at the moment it's fully based on JavaScript saved cookies, so it's not so much resilient. So 2 ways to make it resilient. Add personal information when it's available. For instance, I could have a purchase event that collects emails, and I could hash those emails, hand them over to the GTM server side, and so that Facebook conversion API tag sends them to Facebook to match them with Facebook people graph. This is the first way, which is very efficient. And another way is to rewrite the cookies. As you know, Facebook tracking is based on 2 main cookies, FBC for click IDs and FBP as a browser ID. With a custom template in GTM server side, I can rewrite those cookies, and the fact that those cookies are saved in response of the GTM server will make them resistant to ITP for the moment. So now I'm all good with cookies and with event duplication. Last part is to make sure that consent is respected. The GA4 tags are only conditioned to an analytics consent. So what I will need to do would be either to pass a consent status to GTM server side and here to modify again the trigger, or I can just consider that this GA4 tag, since it sends data to Facebook and it could send data to GA4, I just have to make sure that it is triggered only when both consents, advertising and analytics, are granted. Okay, so you get the idea. So now let's have a look at what it gives. So here I have the preview of GTM server side, which is quite efficient. I've got my website here. I provide consent. Here I can see an event flowing to my server side, and it has basically the page view parameter which will be translated. It has an event ID, awesome. It also has some Facebook custom parameters that I added, but I did not show you in this demo. And if I have a look at the event ID, so it begins with 37. Let's have a look at the Facebook tag. This is not the right one, I think. Event ID. Tag. Here it's all right. Okay, so this works fine. Now let's have a look at what data was received by GTM server side. So GTM server side says, okay, I got your hit. It was a page view hit, and I triggered this Facebook conversion API tag. It was successfully triggered, I hope. And okay, I've got all the information needed. And what data is sending to Facebook? It's sending the event name with the proper taxonomy. It's sending the event ID. It's also sending some custom data that I added. And it's sending properly the cookies ID, so FBP here and FBC. Awesome. It was properly received, so 200 code. And so it works for page views, and it deduplicates properly the data. So now let's have a look at just one other hit. So let's clean this up. Okay, I will go on an item. And here, okay, user engagement is an automated GA4 event. I'm not interested so much in it. So, and as you can see, it does not fire an event to Facebook. And here I have my 2 events, so page views again and view item again. So here, view item, have a look at what data is sent. So again, cookies information, and what is interesting is that it's properly also translated all the information, all e-commerce information to Facebook templates. So basically, my client-side tag was respecting GA4 native parameters for e-commerce. So Facebook server-side tag understood those parameters and translated them to parameters that can be understood in Facebook reports, such as item price, title for the product, and so on. And so that's it for the demo. So to keep in mind, make sure that your GA4 and Facebook parameters are as much consistent as possible. Make sure you rework a bit the cookies or add personal information to make the tracking resilient. And finally, make sure that user consent is strictly respected.
Okay, so now I will pass over to Mike. We'll talk about the different tests that can be performed once CAPI is set up.
Thanks, Marie. Thanks, 55 team. So we have seen all solutions to collect data in a resilient way and see how it can be implemented through Google Tag Manager. Now it's important to see if your integration is correctly done and all data are received in Facebook solution. And I also will explain how you can measure the impact of your deployment. So please, could you click on the slide? Yeah. So the first step to do before launching a conversion API test is to verify event in Business Manager. You have a dedicated section with Event Manager where you can check all activity and all event received by Facebook. So in this example, you can see in blue event received from the browser. So it's 43 event, and you can see in green server-side event received by Facebook, and you see that 46 events are received. So there is a deduplication between those two ways of receiving information if the integration is correctly done. And as you can see, there is 3 additional conversion received by Facebook coming from the server in this example. So this is the first step to do when the server-side integration is completed. The next step to check is to check event match quality, so what we call EMQ. It's for all events that you are sending to Facebook, the score based on the information associated to each event that you are sending. So for example, the score is calculated between 1 to 10, the higher is the better, and what we consider as optimal EMQ score is over to 6.0. In this example, you see that the EMQ score is 5.0, so it's not ideal. And you see that a lot of information are received, but email and click ID are not sent for all events. So it's a way to establish a diagnosis of your integration and see where you can do some improvement to have a more reliant and more consistent integration with CAPI. So these 2 steps are really important. And now I will focus on how we can measure impact on your business of this integration. So 2 tests, really simple to do. First test. So the hypothesis is to measure the improvement or incremental value or additional attributed conversion bring by the CAPI integration. The potential business impact is driving better performance than receiving only signals for a browser. Receiving information coming from the browser and from CAPI could increase the volume of conversion data. So the impact is with more data, we can do more performance campaign. The experimental setup design is a conversion lift single cell. So you have a test group with business as usual media campaign, a control group, and you will see that combining pixel and CAPI data can drive better performance. You can do a pre-test before integration and a post-test and post-study after integration to check the performance variation. So this test could validate the value of your integration. So the first step to do that is using a standard pixel with conversion API. And when you launch the test, maintain please all variables to be consistent in order to avoid any introduction, any bias introduction. So this is the first hypothesis of test to run to measure the incrementality and the impact of the setup. The second test is to measure the value of deep funnel optimization if you send, for example, other signal than what you can register coming from the website. So for example, a sign up or approval after a lead on a website. You can also validate a new ad strategy or vertical best practice. So this hypothesis of test can be run through a multi-cell conversion lift, where you have a cell A with the business as usual media strategy, and you have a cell B with a new media strategy, so a deep funnel signal received, and we will optimize the campaign with this new data source. And at the end, you can see if adding a new data source generate improvement in your performance, in the size of your targeting, and the global ROI of your campaign. So this is really important, that you combine your setup with a measurement study in order to validate that the integration is correctly done. So this is it for the test, and I will show you just the slide after a concrete example of the performance for advertisers who already used Conversion API. So Love Your Melon is a brand, US brand of clothes. So the principle of this brand is to propose some art for child who are battling against cancer. So this brand use or deploy CAPI integration using Shopify, so e-commerce solution, and they saw significant improvement of their performance. So 17% increase in attributed revenue. So they see that really quickly after the integration. They also see higher incremental revenue, higher incremental conversion tracked, and higher event tracked by Facebook. So this 3 or 4 dimension was improved by the Conversion API integration. So this is a best practice to apply if you want to optimize the way that you are managing your campaign. So this is it for me, and I will let L'Occitane and 55 give you more context on their collaboration for this kind of project.
Thanks, Mike. Okay, so I can briefly explain you where we are, what we did, what we'll be doing. So just to restate here, who we are, L'Occitane, really, we operate more than 60 websites, including more than 50 e-commerce websites. So it's really a huge topic for us. Facebook is really a significant source of traffic and business for L'Occitane as well, actively used by all our markets, and representing maybe, I think, more than 70% of our global social paid media spend. So it's really a big topic for us. 55 has been supporting L'Occitane on all digital topics for more than 5 years now. So it's cool that we are really working in a really close relationship. And this year, one of our focus is really to get ready to operate in a post-cookie world. And since we have so many websites, like, we cannot do a big bang. We'll have to anticipate, and it's what we are doing today as well. So to get started, we gathered a multidisciplinary team internally to address this challenge, and also to raise internal awareness on this topic, that is data privacy on the changing measurement world. So this group includes people from our legal team, the group DPO, obviously, the IT team as well as the traffic teams that are mostly acquisition team, CRM team, and even the e-commerce team are participating into all those discussions that are also supported by 55. Following up on the cookie management platform deployment that we did in the previous years, now is really the time to tackle measurement in a better way. So we are taking a first significant step by integrating Facebook Conversion API into our digital marketing stack. Facebook KPI to us is a great opportunity to get started on this. Why? Because Facebook is already, for us this year, a big hot topic. So this iOS 14 release, and the fact that we needed to revamp the tracking for 56 websites, in fact, it became a hot topic, and all the minds of our various teams were really focused on Facebook tracking and measurement. So the next move for us centrally was really to influence and help everyone to realize that integrating CAPI into our digital ecosystem would be the great first step that we should do to tackle this post-cookie world. So today we are happy to, we think it's the right way to move forward and do this first step. Why? It's because Facebook is also offering all the technology and the APIs required to work with a GTM server side. It's really a new step for us, and we are happy to do it by leveraging Facebook CAPI. So it will answer various needs that teams expressed when they realize that measurement needed on data quality needed to be tackled in a deeper way with all those changes. And so today we are initiating the first test, and we are learning. It's where we are right now. Facebook is clearly like the first, as I said, a digital marketing solution that we really want to adapt in a GTM server side world that is new to us. So it's a great opportunity for us to do a first real actionable step into a post-cookie world and to anticipate what will come next year.
Thank you, Julien. So now your burning question must be where to start. So if we go on the next slide, we've summarized here the main steps to start and quickly achieve an implementation of a resilient signal. So first step is to select the right signals. So as you understood, we believe CAPI is the most complete solutions, but as we described, there are also more specific solutions that can match precise use case and precise needs that you have, such as advanced matching or offline conversions. Second step, since here we are talking about long-term solutions for your company involving many teams, you will want to onboard everyone by clarifying the post-cookie context and impacts, and also clarifying to them what you want to achieve with Facebook. The third step is really key in our view. In most of the solutions we presented, we will use people data. So it's key to explain to your legal team why you need such data, to be educational about the technicalities, and also to frame with them how to properly get the consent and how to properly secure the data to make sure that this solution is actually resilient and long-term. Then, as we are talking about an innovative solution, during the build phase, really make sure to document and test everything. And once you're live, your job is not done. You will have to make sure that the media teams and the media agencies properly use such new data made available, for instance, by providing them with training. And finally, you will probably want to measure the ROI of the project, in particular, if you want to arbitrate on a further data scope or country scope scaling. So that's it for the first step. And now just information by Mike.
Thanks, Charles. So we receive at Facebook a lot of questions regarding CAPI integration, and I will try to tackle three key ideas. So is resilient signal our workaround to regulation? So as people data and server side both rely on PII data, so we consider that for all our data solution product and data collection product solution, we need to receive the consent of the users. So it's true for the Pixel, it's true for SDK, and it's also true for CAPI integration. If you are not receiving any consent from your user regarding CAPI data, you are not allowed to send this data into Facebook system. So please keep in mind that all data solution used to collect information on user need to be approved and have consent for your activation. The second question is Facebook CAPI is a workaround to iOS 14. So Facebook Conversion API is not a way to track individually user that would not opt in on Apple enforcement. So this is not something relevant to activate to better measure activity on iOS 14 impact. As CAPI is really focused on web activity, this is not something that you can use to mitigate impact of iOS changes. And the last question is, Facebook API works only with Google Tag Manager. So as Charles explained during the webinar, Facebook Conversion API is an API. So you have several ways to connect your data using this API. So we have some clients who create direct connection with our server. We have a really important list of partner badge on precisely conversion API. So we have CDP, we have TMS, e-com, website, CRM solution that you can use to send your data from server to server connection. All the list can be found in our Facebook Help Center. So based on the context of your client or the client context, you have to select the right technology who best match to your needs. So this is key question that we really often receive. And now we have the Q&A session. So please feel free to share your question in the chat and we try to answer just after.
Right, thanks a lot, Mike. So as I promised you during the introduction, here are the links if you want to download the white paper we've written with Facebook. But also if you want to get in touch to receive the presentation and all of the other material from this morning webinar. Mike, we have a first question for you that was asked during your part of the presentation. So the question is, what is a single cell?
So a single cell is a conversion lift. So the conversion lift is a study where we are splitting audiences in two buckets. So a single cell is a cell where people are converting before having exposed to a campaign, and there is a holdout cell where these people can convert without being exposed to a ad campaign. And at the end, the objective of this study is to compare the result in these two cells in order to have the incrementality and the impact of the integration. So it's what Facebook used to measure impact on each strategy. For example, if you want to target different audiences, if you want to use several kind of creative or several ways to optimize your campaign, we're using conversion lift, single cell or multi-cell. So multi-cell is just splitting your different strategy in other cell, and at the end measure the incrementality of people exposed and people who are not exposed, depending on the strategy, to measure precisely the value of your test.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Julien, there was a question for you about how a brand like yours responds to the cookieless world.
Yeah, how do we respond? I think we need to be agile first. So it's what I tried to explain in the previous slide. First, it impacts a lot of teams, and we need to work very as a transversal group. So it's important to gather people from all your teams. The DPO obviously is one of the leaders of this group, but then it's also making sure that IT, CRM, acquisition, and even e-commerce are part of the discussion. It's also about raising internal awareness for us. What I wanted to say and express in my previous slide, it won't be a big bang, this post-cookie world. It will be a big bang for us, but we need to anticipate. And that's why we decided to take the step ASAP with Facebook, because they provide all the tools and we can already be equipped with Facebook measurement. It's the first step that we do at L'Occitane. Next, it will be about dealing with other platforms and integrating them as a server-side tracking solution. So I would say agile, start now, do a small step as soon as you can, because this year we still have the comfort to be impacted in a way. Facebook is starting to be impacted by it, but I think globally, like, let's move one step at a time, because we are too big to change everything at once. We won't be able to do that. That's why anticipation is the main, I would say, focus for us. And
right,
this first
great.
EP is the right way for us.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Julien. Now I will hand over to Charles that will answer the question that have been posted in the chat.
Yeah, thanks, Sylvain. So a lot of technical questions, and so yes, you will be able to see the demo again in the replay and get the to-do list of implementation. But there was a lot of questions about how GA4 parameters and Facebook parameters coexist. So basically, the Facebook tags detects GA4 parameters. So what you really need to do first is to make sure that your tagging is compatible with GA4, and then most of it will go to Facebook. And then if you have specific needs, you can also add in the GA4 tag Facebook custom parameters. So some of them, I don't think it's exhaustive, are documented on the Facebook documentation. Otherwise, you can analyze the template to make yourself the mapping, or you can ask ourselves to have the correct mapping. So then there was an interesting question from Virginie about whether GTM is really the simplest way to integrate conversion API. So for the website tracking, yes, in our view, if you already have GTM client side, adding GTM server side, in our view, is really the simplest way. But if you are talking about using conversion API not to double track your website, but to add, for instance, sales information, lead qualification information, then it's not GTM, the best implementation. It will be either a native connection from your CRM or a custom connection from your cloud. We had a question about how does CAPI enable measurement of deeper funnel events when the integration and verification you've shown relies on tagging events with CAPI that are also tagged with the pixel. So I think that's what I just said. CAPI can really help double track the website or add offline information. And if you want to add offline information, this reconciliation can be based either on people data or, for instance, from a lead ID that you can collect and pass to offline, and then resend it to Facebook to do. And I think there was a question for what kind of business conversion API is most relevant. So it's difficult to answer this one because conversion API does a lot of things. It does online, offline. It does people that things with people data or without people data. So I think that it's adapted to most businesses, but then among CAPIs are different options of implementations. So online, offline, on websites. So you will need to analyze a bit further the different options offered by CAPI to find the best one. In our view, if you want to start, it can be a good thing to start with website tracking because it's quite easy, and then start from it and, for instance, add offline signals.
Yeah. On Facebook side, if you have to prioritize the deployment of CAPI, you can just check for agency the list of your clients who are really depending on pixel traffic to optimize their campaign. This advertiser are really concerned by CAPI integration. So it could be e-commerce, it could be automotive, it could be luxury. We know that industry who are reliant on pixel activity need to switch on CAPI really as quickly as they can, because brands who are already using CAPI are learning on performances, are learning on integration, and they are building some best practice before the switch off of the cookie. So this is important to start now, as L'Occitane explained it, but this is something that you can do for all industries. But for agency, maybe the message is focused your integration or the client integration maybe more on pixel traffic where it's important, because it's where CAPI can bring more value.
Right, thank you. And I think we cover most of the questions that were asked during the webinar. If we did not answer your question, please feel free to contact us through the means that I have described during the intro. As a conclusion, I would like Julien to give us a last word about how has been his experience so far in setting up Facebook resilience signals.
It's a very interesting topic. I would say we have a lot of active discussions internally. You know, it's both a technical topic on a topic that where we need to raise awareness. Raising awareness internally to me is very important, and it's my main point of focus today, as well as adapting the team to leveraging this tool, which is new to us. So it's a lot of learning. It's to us, it's the field that this post-cookie world will impact us tremendously. And with this first step, we can already feel the emotion that we will have to go through this year or next year when the cookies will disappear. It's a lot of change management for us. That's a very active topic.
All right, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for the great interaction during the webinar. And again, feel free to reach out to us. We'd be happy to answer the remaining question or work on new ones if they come later to you. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks, Mary. Thanks, Julien. Thanks, Charles. Thanks, Mike. And bye-bye, everyone. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.